Hello, good evening. Welcome back to Celtic World Order. As always, I'm Steve O'Martin. It's an absolute privilege to welcome you back to the channel where you are watching this live. I know it's super duper late, but there was a couple of games on tonight in case you forgot, and there was obviously the social media fallout. So I wanted to just give it a wee bit of time. I was contemplating, will I go on, won't I go on, but there's no better time like the present. So where you're listening, catching up further down the line, or you're watching it live, as I says, it's a warm welcome to the channel to yourself. As I says, we'll go look at that action tonight. Celtic 2, Dundee 0. But I suppose, as important as our results are, there's another result that's happened somewhere else in Scotland that's quite shaped the table and the perceptions perhaps of what an actual title challenge looks like. So we'll get into all of that, but before we do, as I say, welcome back to the channel. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much. If you're new, just make sure that by the time you watch this video, before you leave, make sure that you keep us in your hearts. Give that thumbs up if you like what you see in here. Of course, hit the subscribe and the bell icon, and that way every time we go live, you'll be notified. You'll never miss any of our content. As I say, if you are listening elsewhere, you can catch up with us on Spotify. Just search Celtic World Order. Everything will be uploaded there, and you can listen to on the go, no matter where you are, no matter what time of the day it is. Get Celtic World Order in your life. And finally, if you want to talk more about Celtic with ourselves, we're on X at CWPod1888. Again, more Celtic chat, rumours, gossip, opinions, whatever. Everything Celtic is on there. So, well, firstly, let's just say, how drink to that. Big game tonight, obviously. Our game. There was a big game elsewhere, I suppose, that we have one eye on, but we are a Celtic channel and we're only here for predominantly about Celtic. So let's get in about that. Obviously, it was Dundee at home. Now, in terms of a fixture, it's not necessarily going to get you really licking your lips, to be fair. We kind of know what we're going to be getting anytime we face a Dundee side. Very organised, very workmanlike, very boring. Probably just going to try and defend their way to a point. And, well, if you look at the first half, it looked as if it was pretty much going to be, the script. It was breaking down a stuffy side, and the fact that we've done multiple changes, very, very surprising, but multiple indeed. We made the task a wee bit tougher, but we are the champions. These are the results that are ultimately, when you look back at the end of the season, getting it over the line, they're the ones you've got to win, isn't it? No matter how you do it, it's all about getting those 3 points in the bag. It's all about pushing on. It's all about getting ourselves to where we want to be. And of course, if results elsewhere go our way, then of course that's a Brucey bonus, because as it says there, like, if Carlsberg did Wednesday nights, Celtic 2, Dundee 0, and some drama elsewhere, which we'll get on to. But anyway, let's get your comments coming in. There's a couple of you joining in, so it says, absolutely, indeed, there we go, Ryan T, great night, fantastic. Paddy, good to see, can't be with us, but he is watching a lovely night of football indeed. And of course, Ali, I am very good. A great 3 points for the boys tonight indeed. As I says, that is all that matters, and Anton comes in, and that is what we need to do. Ha 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 ha. There'll be plenty of laughing, but it's also a wee bit of summertime. But before we do it, let's just get out of my system. Couldn't help it. It's a classic. So, anyway, let's look at what we were doing first and foremost. Look at these smiles on his face. It's amazing what a result can do, isn't it? So, firstly, Paddy's in the chat, and I just want to get this straight out. I want to give him his flowers. So, not really our thing. We don't pretend to be in the know and all that kind of garbage. Late last night, I believe it was about 10 o'clock at night, Paddy fires a message into our group chat, Celtic Order group chat, and he says, here is the team for tomorrow. Casper Schmeichel, Ralston, CCV, Trusty, Taylor, McCown, Bernardo, Engels, Yang, Kyogo, and Palmer. Not one word there lie. He sent that in there, and Josh and I just kind of laughed and went, you are on crack. What are you doing? There's no way that we are going to make the amount of changes. It's just no happening. And he stays steadfast and says, watch this space. And yes, there we go. That was it. It came out. I've been watching another podcast out there. As I say, there is many other good podcasts out there. make sure you get any Celtic content in your life. Anybody who is doing this, talking about Celtic, go and support it. Just make sure you always come back to Celtic World Order. But when I was listening earlier on, I heard that exact lineup being fired out there, and I thought, okay, there we go. They've thrown it out there. They've said it, and it came to fruition. Now, what I will say about that is I don't particularly like when these things get out there because, yeah, it's a game against Dundee, but, let's just say it's a far more important team or a bigger match. You kind of want to keep your cards close to your chest. You don't want to give them a step for a hint. So that's why we don't post these things out there at a time, even if we hear it. Because one, if it doesn't happen, you'll look like an idiot. But secondly, of course, as it says, got to keep your cards close to your chest. But that was the squad. That was what we got. Talk about full-blown rotation again off the side. We got, as it says, multiple changes. Now, as we've looked at games before where we've tried to do this, it's often been a mixed bag. I'll revert to Falkirk, of course. That was the notable one. Wee bit of change around sort of Ross County. There's been some other games where we've dropped in one or two. And I think at times it has maybe showed that the depth of the squad quality when you go wholesale isn't quite up to scratch. But we managed to get away with it, as we say there. First half wasn't particularly fantastic. It was good, though, to see that we were going to be getting Trusty and CCV. I know it's certainly on the channel. Paddy's been championing that a lot. He's desperate to see that. As his Josh says, once we get to see Austin Trusty in his preferred left-sided or centre half, we'll maybe get to see what he's all about. And it was good for that, simply for me. That's what I like to see. And I thought in terms of what he done, 1 second. In terms of what he done, I thought he had a good performance all round. Quite steady, picked up where he left off, and that was good to see. Ralston coming in for the cold from quite a while ago, so I wasn't sure what I could expect out of him. And of course, Taylor back from injury. So getting him back into the squad, getting him kicking on, absolutely fantastic. People love to hate Taylor, but I think if you've got Alex Bailly, the way that he's been playing recently, it can only be good if we are rotating and they're pushing each other. So I was welcome to see him back. Of course, Luke McCowan, cementing his place back in, staying in the centre of the pitch. Great performance against Motherwell, one of the shining lights in that game. So completely well-deserved. In case you keep on wondering why I'm looking down, I'm just going to bring this up here. Because I'll get this. Say hello to this. It's my new wee dog. This is Ted. And he's chewing up stuff. So he is only a couple of weeks old. So I've got to look after him. So he's at my feet cutting about there. So in case you're wondering why I keep looking away, that's what it is there. He's tearing stuff up. But anyway, back to the football. So yeah, as it says, Luke McCowan, really good to see him coming back in. Arne Engels, again, a guy that's been coming in for, quite, in my opinion, unjust sort of hard times with some quarters of the fan base. The manager obviously came out and defended him. We thought, was he going to double down? Was he going to fire him straight in against Motherwell? Of course, he didn't do that. Protected him, if you want to say that. Brought him on late, brought him back into the squad for the start there, and that was good to see. I thought in terms of him, we'll get on to it, decent performance all round. Bernardo, I thought, was vastly improved as well. But the big surprise is really with that starting lineup for me, and I suppose anybody watching, was, of course, the additions of Yang and Palmer, because they're two guys who have really not been doing too much, to be fair. There have been guys who have had a lot of question marks over their ability, their suitability for playing for Celtic, and particularly Yang. Talk about coming in for the cold. This is a guy who's absolutely stone cold freezing in terms of appearances that went. But we brought him in. How we got on? Well, we'll go on to that. It was all right. He eventually chipped in, of course, with a assist, which is very important. Got his opening goal. But up to that, was he really up to it? Palmer, again, for me, maybe a guy who flatters to deceive. Could have been a lot better. But look, all in all, it was wholesale changes, and we need to see what we got. It was never going to be perfect for the start, so happy with it. The important thing is getting the result. So anyway, into the action. Bear with me 1 second. I don't want me to chew through a cable and kill myself. Right, you up. He's just going to sit here with me. That's what we're going to get. So you might see a dog jump in this screen every now and then. So anyway, into the action as far as things went. Yeah, pretty decent. The first half itself, for me, I thought it was a wee bit stuffy, to be honest with you. I thought that in terms of the first half performance, the term I would use was lacklustre. it was just lacking that wee sort of bit of cutting edge, of course. I think that always goes to say whenever you do these sort of full scale changes in the team, it's not going to be as seamless as you expect. Of course, you'll always, and I've said this time and time again, you'll always expect for there to be an element of continuity in terms of how we play, because they're all the same guys who are trained together. It's the same team. It's the same. Sorry, not the same team. It's the same tactics. It's the same ethos, and it's just a case of some players are better than others, and you will get mixed results when you do those sort of changes. You're not necessarily going to get like for like performances, and we've seen that anytime we've done it. But for me, the one thing that did sort of look a lot better for the previous was that the midfield was slightly better. Against Motherwell, I came on here with Paddy and I says I thought it looked very disjointed. It looked as if we were really, really sort of struggling to keep hold of the ball, and weren't really making things happening, and the intensity wasn't there. For the first half, for me, I didn't necessarily think that we were tearing up trees. The speed of our play, the aggression in our play, it was slightly lacking. But I think part of that is just down to, unfortunately, the wide areas. We weren't really getting too much purchasing. And we've seen throughout the course of this season, a lot of our play has really been highlighted through getting down those wings, utilising that, with the form and Nicholas Kuhn, the way that Maeda's been playing. Maeda does Maeda things, right? Hot and cold at times, but he's been fantastic this season. And one thing that you can't say for either of those two guys is there's not a lack of energy, and that has been sort of indicative of the way that we play. Of course, Jamesy Forrest, he makes a sort of late on appearance, but again, likewise, if you're starting him, you do tend to get that energy out of it. And I just felt that we weren't quite getting that out of guys like Yang and guys like Palmer throughout the course of the first half. So as we start off, though, it's actually Dundee that get the early chance very, very early on, actually. They sort of get that free kick in sort of the first minute or so, and it results into a corner, off the back of which they manage to test the goalkeeper straight away. So, these things can happen, as I say, when you get caught cold and you're making these sort of changes, you don't really know what to expect. So, I wasn't really taking too much away from that, but as quick as these things go, we managed to bed ourselves into the game, and of course, kicking on, and the chance fell to Kyogo. Now, what do you think of this one? Do you think this is a bad miss, or do you just think it's a good save? Of course, we know what we're talking about. Comes over the top. It's a fantastic ball, and actually, and one thing that we've been sort of lacking with Kyogo is picking up those runs, really utilising his ability to get in off the shoulder of defenders. But it's a fantastic ball in, great chest control in the centre, and yeah, it makes a decent enough connection with it. He is very close to the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper makes himself big, and it's a good save. If I'm being really, really picky, as I said the other day on the show when I was on with Paddy, I'm looking for a lot more out of our strikers. And, it's no disrespect. It's no sort of trying to pull on the party and, say ill of these guys, but I'm looking for more for Kyogo. He's making the runs at times. He's doing the right things, but he is just, for me, not quite. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. He's just not got that sort of killer instinct that we're being kind of used to him with it. We know that in games, Kyogo will be the kind of guy that could have sort of 4 or 5 chances and score one out of them. But we need at this moment in time, particularly with Brendan says that Ida is okay, which is a good thing. But when we find ourselves in this position with just 2 strikers, really 2 proper recognised strikers, it is important for me that they're kicking on and they're getting goals. And then he gets another chance shortly thereafter. I am going out and saying this one as a sitter. I've no qualms about saying that. Of course, it's great work from Engels. Somehow he manages to wriggle through. He's surrounded 2-3 guys. He's got the fight in him, pokes the ball through, centre of the goal, right on a near enough penalty spot for Kyogo. And it's a soft shot. He really should be ripping the nets off there, and it's right past the post. It's disappointing for me, past the post for there. That one is one I was worried about that we were going to rue, particularly in the first half. As I say, not because I thought that Dundee were giving us any great deal of threat. They weren't. We know what we were getting. The way that they set up, for example, it was like 4-5-1. What are you going to do with that? They told you straight off, we're just going to sit in. What can you do? And that was indicative of the first half, as I says. It was a team playing a low block, or playing absolutely benched in, just trying to get us to break it down. But as I say, the big thing was there was a lot of effort, there was a lot of trying going on with our midfielders. I did like the work rate of Engels in the first half. I thought that he was a guy who was needing a performance. Would I say it was back to what we seen off him when he first came in? No, it wasn't. I still think that there is room for improvement there. But of course, as the manager says, people perhaps maybe want the world for these guys. I understand that um, I understand that the fee is always going to stick in people's mind, and perhaps when you pay that kind of money, expectation levels are going to be absolutely through the roof. But for me, it was an improvement. It was a step in the right direction from Engels. As I say, he was very, very busy. He was making himself busy. He was moving over. He was over the left. He was over the right. He was constantly looking for the ball. He was constantly looking to be an outlet, and that kind of complemented McCowan. As I highlighted when he played against Marvel, the one thing that I really liked about McCowan was he was always looking for the ball. He was very much taking up that role that McGregor would normally do, directing the traffic and looking for it. But it was good to see Engels chipping in, and the work rate was good there. But as I say, because we didn't really have much in the way of actual quality width from, unfortunately, Palmer or Yang in particular, then it was a losing battle that they were fighting there, and he was trying to pick it up, and they were forcing us very narrow, in my opinion. Yeah, that was my biggest problem with the first half performance. Really not much to write home about, to be honest with you. Out of the two guys that were brought in for the cold, as I say, surprises. For me, Yang, personally, I've not got a problem saying it. Not for me. I just don't think that he has really got what it takes at this moment in time to make the step up. Yes, I'll be pointed to the fact that in the second half he supplies the setup for Alistair Johnson. However, looking at the first half in isolation, I didn't see any point in that first half where he was taking the man on. Now, again, as I've said time and time again, when you play for Celtic, chances are finite, and every single minute you get on the park, you've got to try and show something. You've got to show at least something to give the to give the manager some questions. You've got to sort of, put a wee seeded out in his head and say, this guy could feature. He should be getting more game time. And I just didn't think that he did that, unfortunately. I always think he's very lightweight. That's one thing that I would say about him in terms of the amount of backtracking and the defending. I also think that the way that Yang plays really hindered the way that Ralston played. Ralston comes in, you know what you're getting out of Ralston. So says very workmanlike. People want to call him the Bricky, but he is put in a workmanlike performance. But what you weren't getting is we've been so used to getting those that overlaps from Kuhn and Alistair Johnson. Great work rate, both output in terms of going forward, but also covering each other and coming back. And unfortunately, because Yang doesn't have that same level, if it was Nicholas Kuhn, for example, I think we've got so much more. We've seen those overlaps and the likes from Ralston. However, Ralston was having to pretty much just sit in. He wasn't really getting too much coverage. I thought that he was, let down by Yang, and it definitely kicked on. As I say, look, see, at the end of the day, no matter what happens here, as we say, it's all about 3 points. It's all about getting ahead, getting the win, and that is all that matters. But as I say, look, we're a Celtic podcast. We're doing a post-match show. We're here to talk about it. So it's not to sort of take away from the victory. It's just we're here to discuss what we saw with our eyes, and that is what I thought. I didn't think that we were getting too much out of the way of him. If I flip over to the other side and I look at Luis Palma, again, the question for me still comes into this: can he be repurposed? Can he be made a number 10? Because I still don't see him as being a winger, or particularly a winger of what we expect or what we require from our wingers in a Celtic side. I still think that he's very slow, and we saw that when he had an opportunity to push forward later on in the game. He was never going to get away from that guy. He was never going to get through. He just doesn't possess natural speed, and that's just something that we've got to deal with. But again, in terms of him in that first half, he was putting in some decent balls. He was doing the right things and trying to cross it in, but he wasn't, again, taking on the man, committing, and really showing what you would expect to get out of, as I say, Forrest, or what you would get out of Kuhn on the other side, or indeed what you get out of Maeda. I just thought that it was a great opportunity for him. One thing I would say, though, is positive, that he at least showed some work rate. So it's a step in the right direction. Much like I said about the performance of Engels, it's a step in the right direction. It's hopefully a return back to some level of form, and it's a long way better than what he has been doing the past couple of times he's been in. So out the two, between Yang and Palmer, Palmer for me, better, gets the pass out over the two of them. But on the whole, out of the two of them, for having, the best bit of well over 45 minutes in some of the second half, I was quite disappointed. I just didn't see enough there from them. I was expecting a wee bit more quality and a wee bit more attacking threat. Again, particularly against a team like Dundee, where the players, the quality, the standard exceptional, but yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? The first half, not too much to write home for me about. As I say, the only word I can use was lackluster. There was no real intensity, and it wasn't because it was particularly bad quality of play from us. As I say, we were maintaining the ball perfectly fine. We were keeping possession well. We were passing it about. We were making very few mistakes. It wasn't particularly low quality in that sense. It was just no cutting edge into season. The chances that we did have that failed to Kyogo were spurned, they were wasted. And again, I think that's the thing that we've got to be looking at here. We've really got to be trying to capitalise, make the best out of every single chance that we get in a match, because the last thing you want is for these things to come back and bite you in the backside. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. We do get away with it, but as I say, we've got to be looking at really tightening up the screws and we don't want to have one of these sort of like one decent half and then turn it on in the other, because against slightly better opposition, and there is better opposition in the league, as we saw, for example, against Aberdeen, that you can get stung with those kind of things. But we go into half time, 0-0. Of course, the thing that was probably going to put a rocket up our backsides for the manager was the fact that we goes into it and Aberdeen are leading Rangers. So at that point, just at the halfway mark for us, obviously having kicked off earlier. Stop it. Dear me, sorry. Obviously having kicked off earlier, they find themselves top of the pile. At the halfway point in the match, they're top of the pile as the match stood. So there's no doubt in my mind that would have worked its way somewhere into the manager's assessment at half-time, and a few maybe crosswords said there about getting your finger out your backside, kicking on and getting the game secure and getting those points, and make sure that there's no slip-ups, because after that first half, I've still to go back and watch that, but my understanding was that, Aberdeen were all over them. So they weren't going to look as if they were going to be slipping up, but we didn't want to run that risk. So second half comes in. We are quite happy with what's going on. More of the same. The one thing I did think was a lot better from us, we started off with a lot more purpose. As I say, there was a lack of intensity for me in that first half, a lack of purpose, a lack of aggression in our style of play. And you could see early on that had been something that had obviously been discussed at halftime, because the energy levels were up something noticeable just straight out the bat. We were going for it. We're trying to be a wee bit more purposeful, a bit more aggressive in the way we're trying to probe forward, get ourselves up the park, and all good in that respect. Of course, this is we then get the breakthrough not too long after. We make a couple of subs around about sort of 55 minutes, which I actually really liked, because typically, as we know, the manager normally waits for that 65, 70 or thereon, but it was pretty clear that just things weren't working and they needed to mix up. So, of course, we get Ralston off, we get Alistair Johnson coming on, Bernardo comes off for Rio Hatate, and, of course, Palma for Maeda. But just after the subs, the guy who I've been saying I did not have a great first half, and Yang, he's the one that pops up, and it just goes to show, when he takes on his man, when he does what he's expected to do, it pays dividends. The first time in the match, they actually went for the byline and took on his man. He gets past, he gets the cross over the face of the goal. Takes a wee deflection, doesn't really matter, but it skids across, and of course, there's Alistair Johnson, and he rushes it home. Fantastic to see him again getting on the score sheet. Of course, the header against Motherwell, he then gets another one tonight. But again, what I liked about it is you can see a real aggression and a purpose and a wee sort of adaptation to his game. The way that he's been playing, he picks up the ball. He's actually involved in the initial sort of build-up to that goal, and he gets it, works out to the wing. As Yang's running, he's then working his way into the box. It's that anticipation to be in the right place at the right time, and he sweeps it home. a killer instinct, I dare say, I would have liked to have seen for somebody like Kyogo, but we just didn't quite get it. But 1-0, happy days, settled the nerves a wee bit. And from there on, I didn't actually particularly think that we were going to have that much of an issue. We make a quick substitution. That's Yang's real only contribution to the game, and his last contribution to the game, because he's weeked off. We bring on Forrest in place for him. And of course, later on in the game as well, we get Carter Vickers coming off and we introduce Scales, just mixing things up again. 1-1 is the result sort of out of sight to the game at the weekend, because of course we're up against Aberdeen at Hampden in that big semi-final. Absolutely massive game, and I'm sure that once the result looked a bit assured, it was all about sort of protecting assets, particularly Carter Vickers. Got to make sure that he is going to be safe and good to go for that one. But yeah, very, very happy with that. Absolutely no issue. As the game kicks on, nothing really changes for me. The intensity is there, the purpose is there, and of course we then get the penalty. The penalty, I like, no questions about it. It was all about it. It was very, very obvious. I saw people sort of questioning it. I don't know what these people are questioning. There was supposedly meant to be a search for, some sort of any way to cut it off, as the thing tends to be with VAR. But Kyogo comes through. What I liked about it is, as I said in the first half, we were picking up on his runs. He was making all the right runs, and this is one of the, again, times where he gets through, makes purchase. He completely blindsides the defender, comes up through between the two of them, and as you actually see it in the slowed down, he doesn't get his legs taken. He actually gets pulled. It's his arm that gets pulled on, and it puts him down the deck. Absolute stonewall penalty all day of the week. Arne Engels turns up again, talking about players needing a wee bit of confidence. As I say, his first half performance was far improved from his previous ones. Not back to his entire best, but getting a goal was only going to help him out there. Steps up for the penalty. Great record for the penalty spot. Cool as ice as always. Nice and slips it down the centre of the goal. Rolls it home. 2-0 by that point. Home and dry. Absolutely fantastic. And there's no risk at Santa. The game's done. We saw how little, in fact, next to nothing chances that Dundee had throughout the whole course of the game. So by that point, really, they're sitting in more than ever because it's just damage control. They're 2-0 down now, and the last thing they want to do is just completely fold. Energy levels for them to drop, because that's what we tend to find against these sort of lesser teams. They don't have the intensity levels that we possess, and they can dwindle, and they can obviously end up in the back of your scudding. So I think for that point for them, for Tony Docherty, it's just shut up shop, 2-0, take it and leave it and call it a day there. Pretty happy with that. But the one thing I'd say is, in terms of the second half, improved, definitely night and day, a lot more intense, as I say, a lot more purpose, a lot more sort of aggression in the way that we're trying to get the ball forward and trying to make things happen. Some changes definitely worked out for us, of course. Bringing on Johnson, he turned out to be the man of the match for what, he was only on for about 30 odd minutes, 40 minutes at an absolute maximum when you take on account the stoppage time. He gets the man of the match, but it just transformed down that side of the sort of the wing. He was putting in far more effort than we were getting out of Ralston. I think, as I say, partly that was down to him being sort of hampered with Kuhn not getting a sort of overlaps that you get from there. But I'll take it all day long. 2-0, 3 points, back to the top of the table. And then, of course, the game elsewhere was rolling on because it was one each. And that looked for me as if that was going to be the perfect result. I obviously certainly didn't want Rangers to win, didn't want them to be catching up. But at the same time, I was torn between a rock and a hard place. I really want to see Rangers getting beat. But at the same time, I was like, I don't really want Aberdeen to be level pegging with us, get into that. And that's the thing. It's, it's worse situations to have, because I've said on here before on the podcast, I embrace what Aberdeen are doing. Do I want to see them do well? No, I don't. I want to see them do better than Rangers, put it that way. But do I believe that they're genuine title contenders? No disrespect to them. No, I don't. And that's not because I don't think they've got a good manager. It's not because I don't think they've got good players. It's just simply down to squad depth and squad size. That tends to be the undoing for a lot of these teams. However, them being 9 points ahead come the end of tonight, on reflection, quite happy with that, because when I look at the state of affairs elsewhere at the other end of Glasgow, then I think that they need that extra buffer for the reason I just mentioned, because I think that they will start to drop points. But then at the same time, when you look at the state that Rangers are in, they're going to drop points as well, but it can only help us out. So just for getting it up, you sort of, rubbing it in, ha 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 moment. Yeah, I'm all over it. It was great. Love it. Brilliant finish to a Wednesday night. But in terms of, the title challenge, if you will, as I says, I'd rather that we were going out there and taking it and slaughtering everybody. But I think that between the game against us and the game there, and obviously some gritty results in between, there should have got a wee bit of metal, Aberdeen. And I think that they've got to be given their flowers, they've got to be given a wee bit of respect put on their name, that they're definitely going to be, as I says, a fly in the ointment. And they've shown themselves to be something of the real deal so far. Can they sustain it? Well, as I say, that's the different thing. Do I think they can sustain it for second place? Absolutely. Do I think that they can stay on level points with us? Well, no, because I think that we'll beat them the next time that comes round. But as I say, just as the season creeps on, I think they'll get their draw here and there. They'll start to chip away and lose the points. As we've seen time and time again when we get these sort of title challenges, if you will. But it makes it exciting, doesn't it? And it also makes it quite funny for elsewhere, because if we finish up that game, it's 2-1. They get themselves back into it, Rangers did. But there we go, quite late on. 2-1. They probably should have been 3-1 because they missed a penalty. It was an absolute terrible penalty. I did see that. But it'll be very, very interesting to see the ramifications that come out the back of that, because we can sit here and we can laugh. We can look at the results that they had against Killie. We have the result there that they've had, obviously getting, batter north of ourselves. So it's pretty clear that they are miles off it in terms of where they think that they are. And as it stands, we've got to be honest, as Chris Sutton rightly said at the end of the game, I sent some of his comments, they are title challengers because Rangers are not. And they're second place, 9 points ahead of Rangers. Obviously, they sit behind us by some margin on the goal difference front. But yeah, it'll be interesting because I did stay on, as I say, I stayed up. I was contemplating whether I was going to do this or not, because I was feasting on some of the the online content, and I even clocked in for a wee bit of the Clyde Super Scoreboard to hear what was going on there. But I also think that where do they go? As I say, to bring it back to ourselves, we are in parallel universes here. We are in completely different stratosphere from them. We have got a winning mentality. We've got an elite manager. We have a fantastic squad of players. We've started to add some real quality and depth. I think that we're still perhaps a wee bit off of it, as I say, when we look at guys like, just touching on them again, the likes of Palmer, the likes of Yang, and I also think we need another striking option just in the event for these sort of drop-offs in form. We're scoring all over the pitch, but that's, as I say, come January, I would like to see another winger. Probably I'd say a backup for Kuhn or a backup for Maeda, and definitely a striker. So I'm looking at maybe 2-3 players that I'd love to see in January. I think that would help us to no end. But we're in different stratospheres. You look at Rangers, and I still can't believe it. I was told that they had the highest wage bill in the league beyond Celtic, and that to me just blows my mind if that is the case. I know with us getting Engels and Ida and some new contracts from some of our players, that might have went up a wee bit. But if they have the highest wage bill and that's the dross that they're serving up, then for me, I just think we could find ourselves maybe a second coming of Rangers being in that sort of finishing third. I won't get down that route of saying they're going out of business, because they always manage to somehow find the magic money tree, don't they? But what was fascinating was this was off the back of them posting, 17 million or thereabouts losses for the year again. And it begs the question, doesn't it? Where does this stop? Celtic are in rude health. We're putting out record turnovers. We have millions upon millions in the bank. We've made the Champions League. We have 4 points in the Champions League so far. We obviously know how much that generates in terms of income. And as I say, we have games at home still to come up. 3 games at home still to come up that are very much winnable. Get some more money in those coffers. Get ourselves cracking on. Get into that next phase. And, get through the group stage with more games in Europe still to play. And I think if that's the case, these reinforcements I'm talking about, looking at January, we should be adding them. We should be definitely putting the foot down on the throats and trying to kick on, because in terms of actual feasible challenges for the league, it looks pretty desperate. Because if Aberdeen are going to be our nearest contender, certainly for this season, with the drop-offs from Rangers, can they bounce back? Would they bounce back next season? Well, I don't see how all of a sudden it would be the case. So our benchmark should then begin to be Europe and trying to ensure that we get into the Champions League again. Because if we look at those Rangers accounts that were brought out, for example, and the reason I'm saying this is I know it's a Celtic podcast, but it has mention and it has purpose to us, because when you see the big black hole that they had between the previous year where they were in the Champions League and all right, they get absolutely scudded, and then didn't have Champions League, it shows you how massive that trade-off is when you're not in the Champions League. Now, would us not making the Champions League bring them closer? Absolutely not, because it says their business model, our player trade and everything else, we would still be miles ahead. But it does show you that if you can get into the Champions League, we can continually try to maintain that and just keep on adding the top and top and top. We should be well out of sight. So we should be looking at it and saying, that's what we want to achieve. We know that we will. Not to be arrogant, not to be complacent, but I think if we're honest with ourselves and quiet, behind closed doors chat, the board, the manager will be thinking, we're good for the domestic side of things. That's almost a given. Yes, it still takes, effort and work, and we still got to win games, but largely speaking, we should be all right there. So what can we do to improve in Europe, to keep on getting into those tournaments, to keep on getting that revenue? How can we improve and size up in that? So that's where Celtic, I think, should really be looking at refocusing, because I can't see at this moment in time anything other than another complete dominance, another period of out-and-out dominance from Celtic for the foreseeable. Easily, again, it's bold to say. Do I think we'll go back to the sort of, 9 and potentially going for a 10 in a row? Yes, if we continually do our business well. If we do what we are doing at this moment in time, if we make sure that we're doing sufficient investment in the squad, regardless of what is happening elsewhere across the city, regardless of what's happening up in Aberdeen, in Edinburgh, wherever it may well be, just focus on our own house and continually invest in it, make it stronger, build it, get it better and stronger, then yes, I think that we can do that. But it's important that we do it and do it right. No mistakes, put the foot down and pull away. And I know there's always this idea that, the board like to keep the brand Old Firm, as it once was known, alive. I wouldn't like to believe that. I think maybe in years gone by, when they were coming back in, the notion, the romanticism of trying to have that rivalry there maybe existed. But I think when we've seen the level of contempt that Rangers and the Rangers board have had with their numerous statements and their actions and the shutouts at Ibrox and everything else over the years, that I think any sort of preservation from our side towards them is completely null and void. It's eradicated. I think we are rightly so getting completely fed up with them, and we want to put them down and finish them off for good. But as I say, it'll be very interesting off the back of these results, because they find themselves sitting in third, 9 points behind Aberdeen, completely unheard of. And of course, they've got a manager who's a bit of a basket case, to put it lightly. I was told these comments at the end where that was their best performance of the season, and they will improve. And it was spoken about toenails. It's very much dogs and caravans. But it comes back to it. Can they sack him? Probably not, because he signed that bumper 4-year contract. And as I say, he's looking at the drama from that. At the time, it seemed peculiar. Again, I think it was just when they brought him in, they looked at it as being this great coup. They were like, this amazing, what a guy we've got. And to be fair, when you looked at his track record, they looked as if he was the proven real deal. And I think when he first came in, before all the jibber jabber, he was talking away and he sounded as if he made a bit of sense and looked at an improvement. But I actually think that when he's been brought in, because they've thought he's been of Brendan Rodgers' ilk, of that elite level, that they've probably inserted an option for him to take in his first year of a contract extension. I don't genuinely believe that they've given him that off the back of those results. I think that's been something that's been in his original contract. He saw the writing on the wall when they started to fall away, and he's triggered that extension for self-preservation, for protection, and that's the thing. That's where I think that definitely that's something they've foolishly put in there, and they've got a manager that I do not think that they can pay off. Now, again, I don't know. I'm not pretending to be in the know. I'm just going off chats that I've had with Rangers-minded friends that I have, and apparently, again, I don't see how it would be the case, but knowing the way that Rangers mismanage, it also seems completely feasible. That apparently he's on circa sort of 1 to 1.5 million a year. So on 4-year contract, let's say he's in the top end of that. Do you see them pulling £6 million at their backside to pay a guy off and then get someone back in and then give them loads of money? Because that's the thing. Rangers don't have finances. Rangers are very much in the red. They're not even breaking even. And there's this fallacy because they are free of litigation. They've no more in court. Clap, 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 clap. That's somehow them on the road to recovery. But as we see, and it's coming in the comments there, they're saying that they're going to be taking out another £9 million loan from investors, or aka just foolish Rangers supporting rich people on their board that will give them money and convert it to absolute garbage equity shares that are diluting their already diluted shareholdings in what is a disaster of a business and a club financially. And then, of course, they're saying that they'll also need an additional £4 million. There you go, between the two of them. There's another 13 million to chuck on top of that. They're in a bad state of affairs. Celtic are soaring, and that is, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, I say. So I just wanted to bring that in because I'm pretty sure that as soon as our result was finished, I would say it's safe to say that a lot of people switched over to see what was going on in the other channel, just to see the meltdown. I know that I did. I saw at least the last sort of 10 minutes of it, and I could see their manager cutting a frustrated figure, to say the least, as he was arguing with any official that was moving on the touchline. But for me, take this one 2-0, shelve it, move it on. That's all that matters, isn't it? Celtic's at top of the table, far ahead in terms of the goal difference. Bigger fish to fry come at the weekend, of course. Game against Aberdeen, it just puts a wee bit more edge on that, doesn't it? Because between the result against us, which again, when I look at it, coming back to it, when the cool, calm of day, when all the smoke settled, seemed disastrous. It was very frustrating at the time. But when you actually drew back the curtain and had a look at it, Celtic were absolutely all over Aberdeen and should have trounced them. It was 2 goals lost by our design. Yes, they have the ball in the net, I know that, and it was squeaky bum time. And then I know there's a situation at the end where there's a Duke situation where we felt that we could have had a penalty. But on the whole, take those wee in isolation out, Celtic were all over them. I thought that Aberdeen were good value for money. They set up well. They adapted. They didn't sacrifice their principles, but they were still robust and compact enough. But between that result, between the fighting result and then, of course, taking on Rangers, regardless of what you think of Rangers, in terms of being a watershed result for Aberdeen and really a statement of intent that they are, as I say, is the real deal and that they are here and that they'll be taken seriously, then we've got to have a look at that, and we've got to go look at Saturday and say, we need all our ducks to be in a line here. We need to make sure that everything that we do is seamless. There's no doubt in my mind that the manager and the players and everyone at the club know the gravity of the game at the weekend. Of course we do. Their game against Motherwell, that's got a big question mark over it, because between now and then they're going to be in absolute turmoil. I wouldn't be surprised if, phone lines are on fire and there's people protesting outside and even, dare I say it, boycotting that game, which is only going to hinder them further. So there's that element there. However, what I would say is there's no guarantees, and I would rather that we were there to make sure that we control our own destiny and not fall at the hurdle and then potentially watch, well, certainly Aberdeen or one of the other two get into a final and obviously potentially get a trophy. The first trophy of the season is obviously very, very important. What goes without saying, but it's a real marker. It's a reminder. It's putting down that marker and saying, you know what, this is it. First one's in the bag, setting the standard. We've been setting the standard in the league, but as I say, you always want to have that first bit of silverware. And certainly for me, no matter who that is, whether it's Rangers, whether it's Motherwell, I'm confident that we'd sweep them aside. I actually think the semi-final is a harder proposition than any would-be final. And as I say, it's just with the way that Aberdeen have been playing, they've got this real bit between their teeth, and they look as if they have got fight in them, that they are to be taken very, very seriously. I want us to go out. I want it to be a complete performance at the weekend. I don't foresee anywhere near the amount of ridiculous changes that we've had before. It's going to be a full strength team. But again, that's the thing. We've got that game, then we're straight into the game against Leipzig. Two massive games back to back. Quite a short turnaround in terms of that. 3 sort of days before you go into that, and a wee session before the game on the Wednesday. But got to get this together. Got to make sure that we are focused, put this one to bed, sweep aside Aberdeen. And I also think as well, in terms of if we can beat them and we can beat them comfortably, that it will not only do us the benefit of course, get to the final of the Cup, but I think it will dent their resilience perhaps a wee bit in the league. They don't have European football, as we know, so they've got full weeks of recovery. They don't have that sort of midweek, end of week football to play. But I do think that if they were to take a beating off us, a comfortable beating, I would love it to be a scudding. But if we can beat them and beat them comfortably, I think that will just check them, give them a wee knock in the ribs, a wee reminder that perhaps the result at Celtic Park was a freak instant, that was an anomaly, and that's not the norm. So anyway, as I say, don't want to keep you. It's 12 o'clock. Thank you if you've been watching this live. I say, doing it myself here, dug around about my feet, wee puppy, so I am hard stressed to try and get as much of these comments up as I can. But thank you to everybody that's been in the comments here, talking away. As I say, I've been able to see it in the side of my eye there, and some decent chat amongst you all there. And absolutely, Brown tells it as it is in terms of Rangers financials. It is an absolute disaster. But make sure that whatever you do tomorrow, I know these don't like it, but you know what you've got to do. You've got to do it, because it will be absolutely top quality. As I say, I'll look to get myself back here, probably try to get Josh on board as well, look to cover the game ahead of the semi-final against Aberdeen. Paddy and I will be at that, so there'll be a delay. We'll be going out on the Sunday to give the breakdown of that match as well. But that's us for tonight. As I say, enjoy the rest of your night. I don't imagine everybody will be going straight to bed, because you're probably looking for some further online content. I know that small period between those games finishing and me getting up here to put on a show, that I've probably OD'd on online content of laughing at the results elsewhere, but enjoy it. As I say, 9 points ahead, still top of the table, out of sight on goal difference. We move on to the next one, we take care of our semi-final, we'll look towards a massive game in the Champions League. It just keeps on rolling. Celtic just need to keep on winning no matter how it comes. So anyway, until the next time, you take care of yourself, and as always, hail, hail.